Yesterday was a good reminder of why we both love and hate MLB DFS, because we had the fun of Miguel Cabrera hitting a home run in the snow. That was great. We got to see some really good pitching matchups, get to see fun pitchers out of the mound, but also Cody Bellinger hitting a home run, but not getting credit for it because he passed Justin Turner on the base paths. And when you have Cody Bellinger on your roster and have a full Dodger stack, that's not what you want to see. We had a Byron Buxton home run. The late slate was really fun. A lot of runs scored in the afternoon as well. So the good and the bad in full form on Thursday's slate. Now we get to run it back again. A 6-game slate going on tonight. One of my favorite sizes of slates. Good pitching available, despite Trevor Bauer being at Coors Field. So pretty pumped to see how things break out for today. So let's get you set for MLB DFS on day number 2 of 2021. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to get you set for Friday's 6-game main MLB DFS slate with lock set for 7:10 this evening. And unlike yesterday, no real risk of rain on this slate. Most of the games are out west because a lot of teams have this opening day where they have like the day between. If they're in bad weather areas, which is why the Red Sox and Orioles are playing today as opposed to trying to play through the rain yesterday. That means we got good weather pretty much across the board here. The temperatures are also all pretty close because they are in good weather areas. The highest temperature is either Coors Field at 71 degrees, which is great, obviously, or the indoor game in Miami, and the lowest is 59 degrees. So the gap is about 12 degrees. So that means we don't have to be as drastic with bumping up offenses for hot weather or bumping them down for cold weather because the relative temperature difference between these parks not as big as before. So that's a reassurance for sure. And again, probably no rainouts here. So all good from a weather perspective across the board. We're going to dive into the pitching breakdown in just 1 second. But first, as a reminder, it's not just a solo shot every day here on the FanDuel Multimedia Network. I guess, I don't know, whatever we're going to call this. We also have our Q&A. That is every weekday now, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook pages. You can go there, ask any question you may have about that slate. We can talk pitchers, we can talk stacks, one-offs, overall DFS process, especially if you're a new player. Feel free to swing by today, 4 p.m. Eastern, breaking down this slate tonight or just overall process as well. FanDuel YouTube page, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. Make sure you are subscribed to your platform of choice there to get that as it goes live. Also here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. No NASCAR today because they are off for Easter this weekend, but back with PGA for the Masters next week. Should be a pretty big one there. NBA and NHL podcast via Tom Vecchio. And next week, UFC back as well. So a lot of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you are subscribed and also leave a rating and review if you like what you hear. Baseball is finally back, and you know what that means. Daily Fantasy Baseball. For only $3.33, you have a chance to compete for the $200,000 prize pool, with first place taking home a whopping $40,000. Friday's 6-game slate features the White Sox and the Angels and the Dodgers and the Rockies. Head over to FanDuel today and set your Daily Fantasy Baseball lineup. Baseball is back. Get in on the action. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Friday slate. Trevor Bauer, despite being at Coors Field, is the highest salaried pitcher on the slate. He is $10,000. Blake Snell, $95,000, not in Coors. Merrill Kelly, facing Blake Snell, $8,200. Dallas Keuchel is $8,000. And if you look at those salaries and see that the fourth highest salaried pitcher is $8,000, it could lead you to think that it's a bad pitching slate. I don't think so, especially given that it's a 6-game slate. There's just some risk across the board. And one guy with minimal risk and a lot of upside is Blake Snell. So he's kind of the no-brainer top pitcher on the slate. He's $9,500 facing Arizona. I talked about this in the Q&A show yesterday when someone asked about Yu Darvish. And I love Yu Darvish, as you probably know. But the reason I wasn't there yesterday is because they're not a great team to target because the Diamondbacks don't strike out all that much. But Snell himself provides a lot of juice, and there aren't as many other options available today as there were yesterday. Last year, Snell finished with a 31% strikeout rate and a 3.57 skill interactive ERA. We did see Snell alter his pitch mix over his final 8 starts, where he threw fewer four-seamers, more curveballs, fewer four-seamers and curves in favor of changeups and sliders. That did cut into his strikeout rate. It was 29% in that span, but that's still second on this slate, and it's first in the slate among guys who are not at Coors Field. So if you compare the numbers for Snell to everyone else in the slate, they're going to look pretty good. If you compare him to what he did in 2018, the year he won the Cy Young Award, his peripherals last year are pretty much the exact same that they were back in 2018. He just didn't get as lucky as he did back in 2018. Now Snell goes to the National League, so he'll get to face a pitcher once again, much to our collective chagrin. So I'm expecting a massive, massive year out of Blake Snell. I recommend him as a Cy Young bet over on the FanDuel Hurry Up earlier this year, closed at 13-1 there. I'm expecting a huge year. His salary doesn't reflect a huge year is coming for him. So he's $9,500, got massive, massive upside, and I'm going to take that every time. So I think it's a great single entry slate tonight where you just use Blake Snell as your pitcher and then use whatever stacks you want. I know it'll be very popular. I don't care. I think that he is the best option regardless for tonight's slate. Now, yesterday, I was good with stacking the Tampa Bay Rays offense. They were facing a low strikeout pitcher. They make good contact. They didn't work out because we saw Sandy Alcantara pitch really, really well, which, definitely is in the range of outcomes. Today, I want to use a pitcher facing them. And it's not because the Rays were bad yesterday. It's because I like this pitcher a lot more, and that's Pablo Lopez. He is $7,800. He is at home, and I think the allure in Lopez should be pretty obvious because he made a lot of big strides last year. He has this really, really good changeup. He threw it 30% of the time. That was up from 22% the previous year, and his strikeout rate increased to 25%. That was while keeping the batted ball suppression that had made him good previously. But he also got better as the year went along. Specifically, over the final 5 starts, we saw Lopez throw his four-seam fastball more often. That meant fewer sinkers. And again, fewer sinkers almost always will wind up being a good thing. And in that time, Lopez had a 28% strikeout rate. That came while facing the Braves twice, so it wasn't because of the schedule. He was just pitching really well. Now, the Rays are good. They have a 109 WRC plus against righties, part of why I wanted to go there yesterday. But they will happily strike out. They had a 26% strikeout rate based on their current active roster, what they did last year. So Lopez himself has upside. He has talent, and it's a good matchup with a high strikeout team in the Rays. I prefer Blake Snell because the floor is better. He's not facing as lethal of an offense. I think the Rays are a much better offense overall, but Lopez, a lot of strikeout upside. He grades out well. So to me, it is Snell 1, Lopez 2. And those are the top 2 guys for me, and I want to have the highest exposure to them. Lopez, top value play of the day. The third pitcher is actually the other stud on this slate. And even though it's in Coors Field in good hitting weather, I'm going to go with Trevor Bauer as my third-ranked pitcher for tonight. Now, he's facing the Rockies, so the park here is a nightmare, especially given the weather for today where it is warm. That matters a lot. We get a salary discount here to compensate because Bauer is $10,000, and the Rockies might not put the ball in play enough for it to matter. Take advantage of the atmosphere. You got to put the ball in play. They might not do that. The active roster had an 87 WRC plus against righties last year. That's tied for the worst number on the slate. A 27% strikeout rate. That is the worst on the slate. So they're bad. And it's going to make them tough to stack even at Coors Field this year because we do want to use good offenses. They're facing a guy in Bauer who supplies plenty of strikeouts on his own. He leads the slate in skill interactive ERA and strikeout rate in each guy's most relevant sample. Bauer, a 32% strikeout rate over his final 7 starts, and we know he'll go deep into a game. He's a robot. He never stops throwing. Robot in both the positive and negative sense. He went 90 pitches his final spring starts, so if we're projecting pitch counts, I think Bauer's at 105. You're probably not putting anybody else here above 95, and there are a lot of guys in the 85 range for today. So the floor here is bad for Bauer. He could take a step back if MLB does crack down on substance usage this year. It's still Coors Field, and even with that being the case, I am still on board with using Bauer. I just want to make sure that I have less exposure to him than I have to Snell and Lopez as a result of the park. And because we can probably assume that Blake Snell is going to be the most popular pitcher on the slate, probably by a wide margin, I think there is some good contrarian value in Bauer because I don't expect a lot of people to go to Coors Field for their pitcher. So, I would bump him up in tournaments a bit. But for cash games, just go Snell. I think that Lopez is better in tournaments too, but I'm going to have some Trevor Bauer for tonight. We'll talk about a couple other pitchers and things to watch if you are not as in Trevor Bauer as I am. Moving to the stacking section, and it's going to sound pretty similar to yesterday because the top stack is once again a no-brainer. It is the Dodgers at Coors Field. So we're using the park with Bauer at pitching, but we'll get a little bit of compensation here by stacking his teammates. They're facing Antonio Senzatella, and he does a good job of limiting hard contact from a rate perspective. Like his barrel rate is low, but he allows so many balls in play that the aggregate number of hard hit balls is still going to wind up being pretty high, just from a math perspective. Over 12 starts last year, Senzatella had a 14% strikeout rate with a 6% walk rate. If you add those up, it means that Senzatella allowed a ball in play 80% of the time, roughly, not accounting for hit batters and stuff like that. That's a huge number. For comparison, Blake Snell was at 62.3%. So Senzatella at 80%, Snell at 62.3%. That's a lot of balls in play. Only 5.4% of those balls in play for Senzatella were hard hits. But or were barrels, I should say. But that's still a larger number when there are so many balls in play. So I'm not super concerned about his batted ball suppression, especially not in this park against this specific team, because the Dodgers, they're just too good. So they're clearly the top-ranked team of the night. So I'm going to rank the Dodgers number one again. I'm not going on a limb here by any means, but I think you kind of have to put them there for sure. Senzatella actually allowed a higher hard hit rate and a fly ball rate to righties last year. That doesn't mean you should prioritize righties, but it does mean that everybody here is in play. Now, Will Smith sat yesterday. Kind of knew that was a possibility because we saw Austin Barnes catch Kershaw a lot last year. Seems like we'll see that again this year. But that means that Smith should play in this one. He's $3,400 on FanDuel, a 42% hard hit rate, and a 49% fly ball rate against righties. His barrel rate was 12.9% overall. The league average there about 7.5%. So I'm going to have a lot of Will Smith today. Make up for yesterday. Did lead to some scrambling after lock because I was kind of hoping they'd get him in there for opening day. They didn't, but I think that we should feel pretty confident that he'll be in there for this one. It's hard to tell who will play between A.J. Pollock and Chris Taylor. It does help that they're all pretty similar in salary. You got Gavin Lux at second base, Pollock outfield, and Taylor is eligible both second base and outfield. So although we may not know who the Dodgers will play day in and day out, you have flexibility even if one guy winds up not being in the lineup. So I would say lean towards Lux and Pollock because then if one of them sits, you can just put Taylor at that slot. It's a pretty easy switch. So you have flexibility either way, and I would try to account for that within your lineups. The second stack is also in line with yesterday because that's the Padres against Merrill Kelly. And I like Kelly. I've got him in a dynasty league. I actually think he's pretty good, and I think he has the potential to be a solid pitcher. Nice curveball, nice cutter, and it's a really good combo for him, but he's not someone super well equipped against an offense as good as San Diego's. And the reasoning there is that he just allows too many balls in play. He made 5 starts last year, injury-shortened year, and he had a 23% strikeout rate with a 4% walk rate. That means he allows a ball in play 73% of the time. That's not as high as Senzatella, but it's still a big number, and that's even more concerning because Kelly has had some issues with batted balls. He allowed an 11.1% barrel rate last year. That is the highest on the slate by 1.5 percentage points. Big gap there. It's a small sample, but it was also above average at 8.2% the year before that. So he lets up a good number of balls in play, and Kelly has had some issues with hard contact. So I like him. Again, I think he's a good pitcher, but that could get him in trouble against an offense this good. They have a 131 WRC plus against righties based on their current active roster, 41% hard hit rate, and just a 20% strikeout rate. So I think you add that all up, even though I respect Kelly a lot, that's going to make the Padres the number 2 stack of the slate. Now, Kelly is a righty, which means we can finally use some of the fun lefties the Padres have here. And the main one here is Jake Cronenworth. And obviously fun is, relative because it's not Tatis or Machado. But, Cronenworth, $2,600, should hit at a good spot in the order. He had a 41% hard hit rate against righties last year with just a 12% strikeout rate. That's a really fun combination. His barrel rate was 10.5%, and he can swipe some bags. So I'm going to have a lot of Jake Cronenworth. I think he's probably the best value play on the slate, I would say. So a lot of him. I'm also down for Eric Hosmer at $3,500. I have never been a Hosmer person. I was very, very out on him previously, but I think the swing changes he made last year were legitimate. Hit another home run yesterday, so $3,500, a fair number for Hosmer here. But overall, just stack the Padres by any means necessary. Now, if you want to get all the Dodgers, you want to get to Tatis Machado on the Padres side, you need to find some value somewhere else. And value often means using teams that aren't necessarily good, which gets us to the Mariners against Johnny Cueto. And Cueto is a guy we can stack against because he lets up a good number of balls in play, not quite as many as Kelly or Senzatela, but it's enough. And over the final 8 starts last year, when Cueto was throwing fewer curveballs, he had a 4.63 skill interactive ERA and a 21% strikeout rate. His barrel rate was 5.8%, which is not terrible, but it's also not great. And he still allowed a 5.40 ERA in that time, despite having 6 of those 8 starts be in San Francisco. Now goes to Seattle, good park for hitting for today relative to other parks because it will likely be indoors. Cueto, not a big ground ball guy, so they should be able to put the ball in the air against him. And lefties especially fared well against Cueto with a 33% hard hit rate versus 27% for righties. Also just a 37% ground ball rate for the lefties facing Cueto. And the Mariners have some lefties here, for sure. There are a lot of righties you want to use as well. I mean, again, relative, because you don't really want to use the Mariners all that often. But they might not be a good lineup, but there are some individuals here who are at least interesting enough where I can tolerate them on a small slate where I need value and they're facing a pitcher who doesn't project to be a truly dominant number 1 type guy. The top value player here is likely Taylor Trammell at $2,500. He hit 5th against Gausman last night, Gausman, I should say, and Trammell did draw a pair of walks. He's got a ton of speed. He stole 20 bags in 2019 and 25 the year before that. I think he had like 40 back in 2017 or whatever, so a lot of speed. I'm not sure what the power profile will look like, but we did see Trammell put the ball in the air a bunch when he was in the minors. So when you get him at this salary, at this spot in the order, with some speed available, I can take it. So Trammell, I think the lefty who stands out. The other value guy is a righty in Ty France, who had a monster spring, 8.7% barrel rate last year in the majors, not a lot of strikeouts, and he hit well when he was in the minors too. So I would say between Trammell and France, you've got some good building blocks to help you get up to the Dodgers. I'd also say Jake Fraley, $2,100, decent power profile in the minors, hit 7th last night. You could do worse for $2,100. There's a guy I'd prefer more. We'll talk about things to watch. So if you're looking for like true value plays, but I do think that Fraley works and the Mariners in general, a good value stack for today. Speaking of things to watch, let's finish up there with some potential alternatives. Trevor Bauer, if you're not into him and you need another guy, I think next up for me would be Jesus Luzardo. He's $7,200 and facing the Astros here. And the opponent is why I'm not higher on Luzardo. It's not a talent thing. Like talent-wise, I'd probably put him a bit above Lopez. I just like Lopez's matchup more. But Luzardo himself, 27% strikeout rate, 3% walk rate over his final 6 starts last year, where he threw fewer sinkers, ding, 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 and more changeups. The Astros, just a 21% strikeout rate against lefties, which is not super enticing, but I think if you need a third option, if you're out on Bauer, maybe you don't like Lopez for whatever reason, I think that Luzardo would be number 3 if we exclude Bauer. One guy I'm watching tonight but might not use in DFS is Yusei Kikuchi. He is facing the Giants. They are a super platoon-heavy team, which makes it really tough to use pitchers facing them in DFS, but Kikuchi actually did some decent stuff last year. He had a 24% strikeout rate over his final 8 starts, and he's one of those guys who always looks good in the spring. I have fallen victim to him before, getting hyped about the spring training reports, taking in season-long leagues. I'm in a dynasty league as well. So I've fallen victim to it before, which is why I'm not really, super jazzed to go at him today. I'd rank him behind Luzardo. He's also higher salary than Luzardo, but I am going to keep my eye on him because, those reports are there for a reason. And if we see something good in this first start, I will happily react right away and get Kikuchi into my lineups in his next start. So keeping an eye on him tonight, probably not going to use him, but I do want to see if I can use him going forward. And tonight will give us a good indicator of whether that's the case. Finally, if you need more bats, I would check out the White Sox. They're facing Andrew Heaney, who can get some strikeouts, so that's why they're not a top stack. They're pretty risky. But Heaney allows a lot of hard contact, which can get him in trouble in a hurry. We know the White Sox can provide that, even without Eloy Jimenez against a lefty. And we saw Heaney get knocked around quite a bit this spring, White Sox, pound lefties, Andrew Vaughn, minimum salary. I love that. I mentioned before, Fraley was not my favorite, like super low salary guy. That'd be Andrew Vaughn instead. Definitely someone, if you just want to plug in a one-off play to give you a better stack with the Dodgers and Padres, sweet. Vaughn is that guy for sure. The other guys, I'd rank this stack third if you're not considering salary. The reason that I had the Mariners earlier was because I need the savings to get to the Dodgers and the Padres, so the Mariners got bumped up. But if salary is no concern, like let's say you're going Lopez, I would say the White Sox are the third-ranked stack for tonight against Heaney. It's risky because of the strikeouts, but a lot of upside given the batted ball profile he allows. That is all that we have for today here on the Solo Shop. But again, we are back here once again later today, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. So make sure you go there. Make sure you are subscribed to your platform of choice. Come on by 4 p.m. if there is a pitcher I did not discuss or a stack I did not discuss. Hit me up there. Ask me right away. I'll tell you why. Maybe you could talk me into it. We'll chat. Either way, 4 p.m. Eastern time today, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. If you have additional questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast for the PGA Podcast, NBA, NHL, and eventually UFC and NASCAR as well. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with tonight's 6-game slate. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the baseball. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.